Welcome to Under One Roof MTL, where we are demystifying home ownership one episode at a time. It's 12:05 p.m. on CJD 800. We're with you until 1 p.m. I'm Robin Flynn in studio with Fred Pichette from Fred & Martin Mortgages and LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Robin.
Very great to be joined in studio by you guys. I want to give a special shout out to Ken Connors, who just wrapped up for the last time, basically. He's retiring. I had the good fortune of working with Ken many times over the years when I was producing for Aaron. Ken would frequently fill in for Aaron. So mazel tov, my friend. Enjoy riding off into the sunset. Say hi to your wife for me. Let's kick things off with a trivia question for the week, brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person to text in the correct response to 514-800 will receive delicious Felix and Norton cookies delivered straight to their door. Very important that you include your name with that text message at 514-800. Our question this week: what is the nickname typically used by tourists for the collection of connected metro-level malls and restaurants beneath Montreal's city streets? If you think you know it, 514-800, be sure to include your name, and there's cookies on the line. Guys, lots of stuff in the news this week. Remote work is pretty much always in the news. I think all of us have at least some sort of hybrid situation going on, unless you work in healthcare. You're a firefighter, you're a restaurant server, you pretty much have a hybrid option. But apparently remote work is completely changing the way we buy homes too. What does that mean? Is that just, people aren't living in cities anymore? They're moving to the suburbs where it's cheaper?
It means a lot of things. So first of all, we definitely saw it through the pandemic. We saw a lot of clients want more space, want more land, want more intimacy. So you had clients moving to the suburbs, clients moving off island, clients moving up to the Laurentians. And obviously COVID brought along with that this huge influx of people leaving the city. Downtown was dead. And with everybody working remotely, it was fantastic. Nobody had to think about traffic or commuting or all these things that are part of everyday life nowadays. So with that happening, we saw that. And now people are obviously back into the office 1, 2, 3, 4 days a week, some companies even already. And you're starting to see a shift and people decide, well, if I have to commute 4 days a week, what could have been a 30, 45-minute drive without traffic, it's turning to a 2-hour drive each way. We have to rethink what we're doing here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess hybrid even is no bueno if you live very far out of the city, right?
Well, also, Robin, it's the fact that the interest rates are very, very high and the qualification is harder to people. It's set up for certain people to go further from Montreal to find a property. With those expensive costs now, that's what happened. I got a lot of calls lately. People says, Fred, what could I buy? I could afford only $300,000, $350,000. He says, I think I'm going to have to drive far from the city to find a place. Like, obviously, certain people who work remotely are capable to do that. But if you work in the city, it's a shame a bit. But
the nice thing about our city on that note is that, we can still find homes for $350,000. I was out with some clients in Chateauguay this past week, and we saw single-family homes. We saw a duplex for $350,000. So Chateauguay is only a 20-minute drive from downtown core. With traffic, worst case scenario, it's, let's say, an hour, which is the same as the West Island, same as Laval, etc. So the beauty of Montreal is that even though these price points don't seem very high, you can still find a decent home within this range and this radius. So don't be discouraged, and you won't have to go to the Laurentians to buy a property, even if you do have a slightly smaller budget.
But are we going to see what happened in Toronto where that radius gets bigger and bigger and bigger? Like the GTA is enormous now, where people say they live in Toronto and they live in Etobicoke, is that going to start happening in Montreal where people are living in Hudson and it's considered the greater Montreal area?
So, look, it definitely does make up what we call the Montreal metropolitan area, or the GMA, and are we going to start seeing that? People have chosen to live out there. People have made their lives out there. We do have a lot of factories, a lot of warehouses, a lot of industry out in all these suburbs as well. So not everybody is choosing to commute downtown if they choose to live out there. But there is still several options available. I don't know too many people from Hudson commuting to downtown every single day. Yeah,
no, that would be a long one. And you mentioned Chateauguay. I can attest that it's a wonderful place to live because that's where I live. There's a really great industrial sector in Chateauguay, and business is booming. They're building new factories and stuff there all the time, and all I see are hiring notices in the windows.
I think it's the same. If you took, as an example, Vaudreuil-Dorion, a couple of years ago, there was nothing there. And now it's a city itself. Is that considered a greater Montreal?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. All these areas make up the Montreal metropolitan area. So the island of Montreal is no longer the exclusive place to call Montreal, or home, if you will. There's tons of great neighborhoods with significantly better price points, or more attractive, more accessible, that you can go. You can set up a whole life there. Tons of great schools in these neighborhoods. And you have, whether you're in the West Island or even off island, tons of shopping centers, right? So you have everything you need, restaurants, Costco's. I mean, how many different neighborhoods have a Costco nowadays?
Yeah.
Right?
And LJU, the expert of real estate, do you think it's possible to find a property between 300, 350 in those areas?
I saw it in Chateauguay this past week. You know, I was surprised, to be honest. I didn't think we'd find something at that price point. And the home definitely needed a bit of renovations. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't turnkey. But if you want to get into a property, you want to start building some equity, and you're able to do a bit of work over time, you'd be very well set up. Because once this property is renovated, it's worth at least $450 to $500. So you can definitely build up some equity pretty quickly.
That's why it bring me the idea, the mortgage plus improvement product that's out there.
That's exactly
very
what we
good
discussed.
tools.
Yeah.
To buy a property at a cheaper price, put some renovation in it, and potentially rent
value
it
right
or
away.
reevaluate it. Yeah.
You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. If you have any questions or comments, you can always text us at 514-800, or you can call us at 514-790-0800. We'd be happy to do our best with those questions. Speaking of remote work, businesses are trying to lure people back into the office more frequently, if not full time. And apparently this is happening in the US. I read an article this week. Housing benefits are the one thing that employees are saying might actually get them back into the office. It's not the pizza parties. It's not, discounted parking. It's not, more integrated. No, they're saying, if you can help me pay my mortgage, if you can help me with my down payment for my first home. These are the things that people want. And I was thinking about this, what would make me want to work in an office? I would want help around the house. Give me a stipend for a housekeeper, to sign up for like a HelloFresh service or something, so I don't have to stress about cooking after working all day. So I think these are the kinds of things that employers are going to have to start considering. What do you think?
I think it's super important. I mean, in that article, they mentioned one company had bought an entire apartment building to offer discounted rents to their employees.
Wow.
And another one in the U.S., you have this thing called a rate buy-down, where you can technically pay up front to reduce your interest rate. And in doing so, some companies were offering rate buy-downs. So instead of paying, let's say, the 6% interest that was industry standard, maybe we'll get you a 5% interest. And the savings on that could be significant. And especially in the U.S., where you have a 30-year fixed rate term, if you get that discount over the whole course, that's pretty impressive.
I'm curious what that would mean, though. Like, I would be scared to move into an apartment that was my employer's. Like, if something goes wrong, now you not only are out of a job, but you're homeless.
You're signing a contract with the devil.
Yeah, they own you your entire life. That feels scary.
No, but I think the employers knows that if they want to keep some employees, they have to give them flexibility or bonuses or any other privilege. If you want to retain your employee, because it costs a lot of money for a company to give, how can I say?
Turnover costs a lot of
Exactly.
money, right? So retraining, finding new staff, going through the motions, it's very expensive. So definitely keeping people is the best policy, if you will. Obviously, keeping your best people even more so. But the idea of the discounted rent, I think, is very interesting, because you can get away with that without having a taxable portion associated to it, right? If your rent is $1,500 instead of $2,500, well, that's a rental contract. It's not technically taxable income necessarily. So,
that wouldn't be considered a taxable benefit?
I'd recommend you speak to an accountant, especially in the U.S. But nevertheless, if I have a lease signed with you at X rate, the government would have to kind of go out of their way to prove that the rental value is this, and then that there is a taxable benefit associated to that, and go down that road. So I think there's definitely an interesting tax savings there.
Makes a lot of sense. Still to come, how do lump sum payments work? We're going to find out after we check traffic.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
This is your lingo lexicon on Under One Roof MTL. Lump sum payment. In the context of mortgages or loans, a lump sum payment refers to a single, large payment made towards the principal balance of the loan, typically in addition to regular monthly payments. This payment is made voluntarily by the borrower and is often used to reduce the overall amount owed on the loan, thereby shortening the loan term or lowering the total interest paid over the life of the loan. For example, let's say Marie has a mortgage on her home in Pierreful. She receives a bonus from her employer and decides to make a lump sum payment of $10,000 towards her mortgage principal. By doing so, Marie reduces the amount she owes on her mortgage, which can lead to significant interest savings over the remaining term of the loan. Additionally, making a lump sum payment may allow Marie to pay off her mortgage sooner than originally anticipated, freeing her up for other financial goals or investments. This has been your Lingo Lexicon on Under One Roof MTL.
It has indeed. We are with you until 1 p.m. If you have any questions about property management, now is the time to send them in. 514-800 if you'd like to text it in. Please include your name. Or you can call us at 514-790-0800. If you own more than one property and are currently renting out your second, third, fourth properties, you've probably considered bringing in a property manager at some point to help you deal with everything. LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties is our expert property management guest for the week. Welcome, LJ.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful to have you. First of all, what exactly does a property manager do? What responsibilities would fall within a property manager's purview?
So property management is going to take care of everything from start to finish. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you give us a mandate to manage property for you, we're here to be your intermediaries. We're here to take care of all communication. We're here to update you regularly on what's going on. But you should no longer be talking to the tenant at all for anything, so that you no longer have to deal with the headaches, the broken toilets, the arguments about rent increases, all that kind of stuff. So we're here to really give you peace of mind, always be present, handle emergencies, take care of everything in between. So to kind of give you a bit more of an in-depth look at it, we're talking about collecting rent, paying suppliers, renting out units, preparing leases, taking care of maintenance, repairs, preparing RL31s that we have to do annually, preparing income statements, renewals, increases as well, and then managing all communication with the tenants, etc.
LG, I hear a lot people saying, I don't want a home property. It's too much of a headache managing tenant. But what are the costs associated with hiring a property manager?
So there's lots of costs associated, but it really depends on how you want to look at it. I can give you our fee structure because everyone does it differently. But the way we do it is we charge 7% of gross rents. And then whenever we have to send any specialists, we don't upcharge for it. So we'll send a plumber. We'll just pass along the bill to you. We'll cancel that out like that. We have handymen on staff as well. So for minor things, we can send them at an hourly rate. If we have to go to the rental board, there'll be an additional fee for that. And if there's an emergency services overnight, there's an additional fee for that. But anything regular, whether it's going to pick up the rent, whether it's going to see an issue, assess it, handle communications, going in person, talking to, all that kind of stuff is included in the service. We're really here to manage the property. That's what you hired us for. So that really encompasses all in that general 7% fee.
Cool. Is it worth it? Like if you only own one secondary property, you've got your primary residence and maybe one other property, is it worth hiring a property manager to manage that other property?
Is it a condo? Is it like a 6-plex, a 15-plex? How many units are in this one property?
Well, let's say it's one. Like you own a second house and you're renting out that house. I mean, if you own a 6-plex or apartment building, I assume, yes, a property manager would work.
So it really depends on your day-to-day, right? I have some clients who say, and I'll even tell them, if you have a bit of extra time and you can handle managing it, do it. By all means, you want to learn the process. You want to understand the ins and outs of it before you do outsource it, to understand how, if it's being done right, if it isn't, the way you like to do it, etc. But I have some clients who are doctors who are just generally very busy people, have a lot of family, etc. And they want to, even though it's just one property, give that contract out from the beginning, because they are either don't have enough time or they plan on buying more properties, and they say, instead of me starting and then having to pass it along halfway through, let's just get a property manager from the beginning. I'm going to understand it. We're going to build a great relationship. They're going to help me with my portfolio optimization, etc. And then we go from there. I mean, to me, a good property manager is really going to help you optimize your portfolio so that your investment's protected, so that it has a lot more future gains and you have great appreciation on it, because that's really the name of real estate. It's simple to just buy a property, park some cash there and forget about it, but to really create that value, it requires some optimization, some hands-on work.
Makes a lot of sense. When you are working with somebody, do you have any advice or suggestions that you give them? If you're handling an apartment complex, would you tell that client, you should probably make some renovations here? A lot of the tenants are complaining or something. All the time.
So my approach is, I've been owning property for close to a decade now, and I treat all these properties the way I would treat any of mine. So we're going to do an initial walk around the property, and I'm going to look at things and say, hey, I think that you should take care of X, Y, Z for these reasons. First of all, every time we do take care of something, we obviously have the opportunity to increase rents, so that's a huge factor. But even just a property that is well maintained and well managed is going to give less headaches. You're always it's going to cost you more to handle a headache in an emergency service than it is to preventative, like insurance. We always want to prevent as opposed to deal with the emergency in that sense. And by doing so, you get better quality tenants. They pay on time more often. They tell their friends to come into the building. They give great referrals. And if you're not constantly at the rental board fighting with your tenants, it's just a better experience and it's more profitable for everybody.
Yeah.
Also, LJ, is it difficult to find a good property manager? Because it probably, you need to get the right tenant, you need to be organized. Is that something that it's hard for you to?
I mean, I've definitely heard of a lot of clients having nightmare stories from property managers, and it's one of those things that it's tough to find a reliable property manager. Don't get me wrong. There's not many barriers of entry to opening a property management company in Quebec. It's not one of the most regulated industries. And because of that, obviously, I mean, you could work with anybody. But if you can find a good property manager, they're really worth their weight in gold, to be honest.
And what should you look for when you're trying to find a good property manager?
I'd say some of the things you want to look for are experience, how many assets they have under management, so how many properties they're already managing, in what areas. Do they own any properties? Like I said, if you've never owned a property, it's very easy to kind of point from the side of the road what you think you should be doing. But if you've dealt with it, you've actually had to pay out of pocket to learn some of these mistakes or how it works. You're in a much better position to advise people on what to do in this regard. And then finally, how responsive are they? Communication's key here, right? So is it easy to get a hold of them? Do they respond to emails pretty quickly, phone calls, etc.? They're managing probably one of your largest assets, so you want to be able to have access to them.
Are there different kinds of property managers? Like, I mean, there's property management firms, for example, and then there's just a guy you can hire to run your apartment complex, right?
So I'd say the two kind of options there would be kind of having an in-house concierge.
Okay.
Right. So you have a larger building and they have somebody who lives in the basement typically who takes care of cleaning stuff, collecting rent, handling issues on the fly. That's the more classic style. And then you have a property management company that obviously has systems, that has software, that has employees, that has a team in place to handle all these things it's a bit more organized. They'll do the financial side of it. They'll obviously do the communication, the management, everything encompassed into one service.
Okay. Yeah, when I think about the person who lives I don't know about you guys, but I used to watch Party of Five in the 90s, and that was what Bailey did. He was a property manager. He got cheap rent, and he was able to collect all the rent from the tenants. Anyway, that was my experience with property management. If somebody wants to work with you, LJ, specifically, they're like, I like this guy. I listen to him every Sunday. I trust him. I want him to be my property management firm. How do they get in touch with you?
So you can reach out to us on our office line, 514-500-5222, or you can contact our property manager, Thierry, directly, 514-709-6397. He's every day on the ground taking care of things for us. And we're currently in the process of building our new website because we're rebranding.
Cool.
And our new brand's going to be the Plex Doctor. So plexdoctor.com, where one of my clients who happens to be a doctor had the idea, and he said, LJ, you know what, you take care of optimizing our building. You are the Plex Doctor. You handle these things for us. And I was like, that's a great idea. So we're running with that.
Okay, but now I need to know where you got your PhD from, LJ. I think it's very important. People need to know. It's not false advertising. I think it's really cool. Plexdoctor.com is going to be the website, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's really, really cool. You mentioned your guy, Terry, is the one that actually does things. What does a typical day look like for a property manager? What if somebody's listening right now and they're like, hey, that sounds like a cool job. I want to do that.
So what does it look like? It's a variety of things. So it involves right now taking care of leasing out properties. So going to show properties that we have coming available for rent, handling requests, handling maintenance things. Obviously, we live in a digital age, so we can get a lot of information on the fly. If somebody says we have a leak, we'll say, send us a photo, send us a video. And then that way we can send the appropriate professional. We don't want to waste any of our clients' dollars. So sending a plumber when technically a handyman or we can go in and simply shut a valve, we handle all that. So when we can do that, we do that. But going to see things, going to see assess damage, going to meet with contractors, going to meet with, for example, last week we were doing walkthroughs of all of our properties. We have some commercial properties that are currently vacant, so we want to go once every 2 weeks or so to make sure that there's no ongoing leaks, that there's nothing happening that we wouldn't be aware of because nobody's at the properties regularly. So a lot of communications, rent renewals, right? 'Tis the season, so he's been working on rent renewals a lot for the last month and a half, I'd say. Before that, we had the RL31s, so there's always something going on.
Quebec is so unique too, right? Because everybody's rent comes up for renewal at the same time, right? Everybody's leases come up in July, so you got to get those out 3 months before, right? 3 months?
So you can send a lease renewal anywhere from 3 to 6 months prior.
Okay.
So we'll typically send it out 5 months prior because we're within that timeline. It also, the tenant has 30 days to respond, and that way we'll have 4 months to manage to do any improvements and start the rental process to really protect our clients.
And LJ, is it you or the property manager who decide of the increase of rents? Or
So we do that together, right? So the rental board, first of all, who decides is the rental board? The rental board is the one who sets how much the increase is. The TAL has a calculator on their website that'll give us how much we can increase. So for example, this year, the average increase was stated to be 4.8%.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've applied that to most of our units, and some units we had to do more work to. So then we take out the calculator and we do an exact calculation for, we had to renovate this unit, we had a roof problem here, we had foundation work, whatever it might be, to really make sure we're capitalizing on all the dollars possible for our clients, because ultimately, anybody buys property as an investment, eventually is going to want to sell this property. And the value of this property is going to be based on the income of it. So it's super important to make sure we maximize rents.
Makes a lot of sense. That was super informative. Thank you, LJ, for coming all the way in. Up next, how you can help your adult child purchase their first property. We'll tell you after the news.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties. This is the Mortgage Minute.
This important piece of information is something that all first-time home buyers should know, but sadly, many do not. This is your Mortgage Minute. If you're buying a home in Canada that is under $500,000, then yes, your minimum down payment is 5%. If your purchase is going to be over $500,000 but under $1 million, then it is 5% for the first $500,000 and 10% for the balance. As an example, if your purchase price is $800,000, you would pay 5% on the first $500,000, which is $25,000, and 10% on the $300,000 balance, which is $30,000. Therefore, the minimum down payment would be $55,000. But if your purchase price is over $1 million, then you must have at least 20%. So if your purchase price is $1.3 million, that means you need a minimum of $260,000 for the down payment. While it is a common misconception, there is no lower down payment if you are a first-time home buyer. It all depends what your purchase price is and if you're purchasing to own or occupy or as an investment.
You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin Flynn with LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties and Fred Pichette from Fred and Martin Mortgages. I have a question. Is that threshold of $1 million like movable? Is it going to change over time? Because more and more properties are increasing in value.
Everything's movable.
Yeah, because I could see that going up to like 1.1, 1.2, just gradually increasing over time.
a lot of people are pushing to get at least 1.25 or 1.5 million.
Really? How long has it been at 1 million? Like, when's the last time it changed? I'm throwing a curveball here, guys. Sorry.
It's been a while, and it's
Yeah.
been 1 million. And I think it's in Quebec, it's still okay, but it could be a bit more.
To be honest,
Because a lot of property are increasing in value.
But not just that, most banks, like we say that's the minimum because that is the minimum. However, most banks are saying that on the portion over $1 million, it's actually 50%. So to get that, to circumvent that, you actually would need an exception from the bank. And again, most banks work on this rule that they'll give you one exemption out of everything. But it's technically, they want more money. They want more equity in the property.
Makes sense. Before the news, I mentioned that we're going to talk about helping your adult child purchase their first home. We got a really interesting text that I think is a great way to launch into this discussion. It says, adult child. When one is an adult, one is not a child. Parents should have nothing to do with their offspring buying a house, but they should have been training them all along since birth how to be an adult and to stand on their own 2 feet financially. And I think that's a very interesting text because things have changed drastically in the last 5 years, let alone, 20 years from when you first purchased your home. If you're looking at interest rates, property values, inflation, wages not keeping up with the price of property values, I think it's more and more common now for parents to help their kids who are adults get into that property market. And I think if they didn't, most of my friends, their parents either helped them with the down payment or did something else to help them get their first home. I think a lot of people would just be priced out completely. Personally, as a parent, my daughter's only 2, so I haven't bought her a house yet, but I wouldn't want to see my child struggle. And if I had the means to help my child, I would. And I don't think that necessarily means you failed as a parent to teach your child. I think it's acknowledging the fact that the world has changed, reality has changed. So let's talk about actually wanting to help your children purchase their first home. There's a few different options here, starting with a collateral mortgage. First of all, what is a collateral mortgage? I don't even know what that is.
So I'll jump in. A collateral mortgage is a situation where if you, as the parent in this case, have a lot of equity in your property or have paid off your property, you can technically give your child the option to, if they're missing the down payment, basically put a mortgage on your property for the spread. So they can get 100% loan to value on their purchase because they have a great income, they qualify for the purchase, but they don't have the down payment. They haven't been able to save because of XYZ reason. And you are no longer working, so you don't have a great income stream, so you won't be able to necessarily help on a co-signing perspective here, but you have this asset that is completely paid off or that has a lot of healthy equity in it, so you can allow them to borrow against your property to get the down payment effectively to purchase their new property.
Okay, that makes
And
sense.
it's true. Some people prefer doing that strategy instead of taking out money from their savings. It's actually a good strategy.
So what's the difference between, okay, so collateral mortgage, you're using your own house basically as collateral for the down payment. A few weeks ago, we had somebody in studio talking about reverse mortgages, that some people were taking out a reverse mortgage on their house to be able to give their children their down payment. What's the difference there?
Well, it's not really a difference. It is a difference. In that case, your house is not in guarantee for the purchase of your kids' property.
Okay.
But you taking out some equity, some down payment to gift to your child to help them to qualify.
So it's more about like the obligations of what you're doing with the money. Reverse mortgage, you take out that money and you can do whatever you want with it. When you're doing a collateral mortgage, your house is collateral for your child's mortgage.
That's one part of it. The second part of it is, let's say, Robin, if you were using collateral mortgage on one of your parents' house, well, your mortgage is still going to be the one payment. Even though they have the two assets in collateral, you're going to have one mortgage payment for this mortgage for, let's say, $500,000 that you've taken, which was the purchase price.
Okay.
In the collateral, your parents would be taking, in the reverse, your parents would be taking the reverse mortgage. They would get the funds. They would then lend you the funds, but they would have interest payments to make on this loan that they've taken all of a sudden.
Gotcha. So you wouldn't have to be paying interest in a collateral mortgage. So it probably saves more money in the long term.
It depends.
It depends. Jeez.
No, because even though you have a reverse mortgage, you don't have the obligation of paying anything because they capitalize the interest. But if you want, you could pay the interest every month as well, which is it give you the option as a parent to say, listen, I'm going to take out some equity as I live. I'm going to help my kids and I'm going to gift them the down payment. Obviously, it gives me a mortgage of my property. But again, there's no obligation when you have a reverse mortgage to make any payment.
Okay.
That could be an option, an interesting option as well. Or if you have a lot of money, savings, TFSA, and you say, it doesn't hurt me that much, I'm going to take out 50 or 100 grand from my saving and gift it to them to help them to qualify.
If you receive a gift from your parents like that, do you have to pay any tax on that? Is capital gain? I don't know how that works.
You do not have to. And this is why one of the reasons we're seeing this huge transfer of wealth is, first of all, obviously the baby boomers are sitting on a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And we have concerns in Canada as a whole that there's going to be new taxation laws or changes to the tax code that might affect the way wealth is transferred. If you go into France, for example, they actually tax you on your net worth annually. So it's not just on what you've made or whatever, but it's your net worth. So if Canada happens to change the way they're doing any taxation, this is a huge concern. And when you're dealing through an estate, you have to go through probate tax and all that first before it gets passed along. So
who's making these decisions? I feel like millennials just get a raw deal. Like the system was in place and it worked really well and there was no tax on wealth transfer. And now that it's actually going to happen, we're going to get that transfer of wealth. No, you're going to be taxed on it. I feel like every turn, millennials are just...
And that's why you're seeing a lot of parents and baby boomers say, you know what, instead of waiting until I unfortunately pass before transferring this wealth, I'm going to help my kids now. So first of all, they can have a nice home. They can have a place for the grandchildren that I want to see them grow up, that are hopefully going to be closer to me than that 45 or an hour-minute drive that you're going to have. And these are some of the concerns. It's obviously helping.
And the other option that I see, LG, is the parents co-sign the mortgage of their kids. Okay. Basically, they became homeowner of the property of their kids.
But you would have to have some sort of income in order to qualify as a guarantor, right?
Yes, but sometimes you're just missing a $30,000, $40,000 incomes to qualify for the property that they want. And most of the time, parents with pension income, QPP, old age, they have enough income. And their house are paid off, and they don't have a lot of debts. And sadly, this is how it works now because we have to apply the stress test to get you approved, which is we need more income to qualify.
And what are the risks associated with co-signing your child's mortgage? If they default, it's on you, right?
So here's the thing. A lot of times when you see this co-signing, you'll have the parent on for 1% ownership and the children on for 99% ownership.
Okay.
That being said, with the banks, the debt is 100% ownership on each individual person.
Right.
So you're on the hook for the entire loan amount.
Yes, but the strategy sometimes is after 5 years, your mortgage balance will be, hopefully lower, and your income as a kid probably increase. You might be able to qualify by yourself.
Okay, so when you locked in for like a 5-year term with your parents as a co-signer, 5 years later, they can potentially come off the mortgage and they're no longer there.
It's the time to remove them from the mortgage.
So when you co-sign your child's mortgage, you're not making a 30-year commitment necessarily.
So in Canada, we work on the term. So you're technically committing to whatever that term is, 3 years, 5 years, whatever that might be, on a 25 or 30-year amortization. But you're committing to that initial term. And if everything goes according to plan, at the end of that term, they refinance you out. Off you go. You help them get into the property, and then everything is smooth sailing from there.
Oh, I learned so much today. I love this. This is great. You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJAD 800. The time is 12:45. Our property of the week is coming up next. That's after we check traffic.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
You are indeed listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJAD 800. Robin Flynn with LJ Aguinaga and Fred Pichette. We're with you for another 10 minutes. My goodness, time flies when you're having fun. And I feel like I've learned a lot this week. We're going to do a quick recap of everything that we've learned in a little bit. But first, we always start this segment with our property of the week. And it's my favorite part of the show, LJ.
Oh, thank you so much. This week, I actually have an incredible property. This week's property has won 2 prizes for its volume of light from Les Grands Prix du Design in 2012.
Wow.
It's nestled in the heart of Outremont, located at 5228 Hutchison. This stunning condo on over 1,400 square feet has an open concept living area with 2 closed bedrooms as well as a mezzanine. Floor-to-ceiling windows in the kitchen and mezzanine bring an abundance of natural light. The unit has a tasteful and modern design and a private rooftop patio where one can enjoy incredible views of the city and the mountain. Being only 1 block away from Laurier Avenue, your options are quite endless. My favorite eateries in the area are Le Méac for excellent French food, or Milos for an amazing and fresh Greek.
Oh, and if you go to Milos, odds are you're going to run into somebody famous. Like every time I've ever been to Milos, there's either a dignitary, a famous politician, a famous actor. Jennifer Aniston famously eats there when she's in town.
Sure.
And you're right next to a bagel, Fairmont bagel.
All the bagels. I mean, look, we touched on those too, but the amount of excellent food, coffee, La Croissanterie's on the corner. Like, there's tons of options right next to you.
Wow, that's really, really cool. Totally unrelated, but there's a new donut shop in NDG called Homer's. Did you see this?
I did not see it.
It's like its theme is like The Simpsons, and they have had lineups since they opened. I was in NDG last week, and I drove past it. It's on Sherbrooke and Grand, I believe. And there's just lineups out the door. Crazy. Anyway, totally unrelated, but I just thought it was kind of neat that we had this like Simpsons-themed restaurant in Montreal. Very, very cool. Our trivia question of the week brought to you by, speaking of delicious food, Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The question today was, what is the nickname typically used by tourists for the collection of connected metro-level malls and restaurants beneath Montreal's city streets? Michelle was the first person to correctly text in the answer at 514-800. It is the Underground City.
Dun, dun, dun.
I remember very clearly some tourists coming up to me downtown one day asking me where the Underground City was. And I didn't even know what it was, even though I'd lived here my whole life. I was Underground City. Like, Googled it. And I was like, oh, you mean like the metro level? And I was very unimpressed by that because I didn't realize it was a tourist attraction. But then when they realized that's all it was, like they were picturing like buildings underground, like a city beneath the city. And I was very disappointed to tell them, like, no, it's like a shopping center that's connected.
So I've actually done a bit of research on this because I've done some videos on it on YouTube. And if I'm not mistaken, it sprawls over 18 kilometers.
It's huge.
Right.
So
it's one of the biggest in the world.
I think it might even be the biggest in the world, to be quite honest. And I, again, growing up in Montreal like you, felt the same way, like, oh yeah, just a couple of restaurants, stores, whatever, not so impressive. But when you get the literature on it, that you have an underground city that sprawls over 18 kilometers, and I've actually taken it from the Bell Center all the way to Place Ville Marie. Like, you can do all sorts of crazy things completely underground.
I think you could go from Place des Arts to hot water.
Yeah. And what's cool about it is we live in a city that gets quite cold in the winter, this winter notwithstanding, of course, but to be able to not have to go outside. Like, I went to Dawson when I did my cégep, so I came in from Chateauguay, took the bus, whatever. Once I got into the metro at Angrignon, I could take off my coat. I was done for the day, because Dawson, you get into it through the metro at Atwater. If I wanted to go somewhere, just go down into the metro, stay in the underground city. It was connected to Alexis Neon. It's kind of cool that in the winter you can just not even have to worry about your coat. You're always indoors.
I did the same thing, coming in, take the train from the West Island, get off at Bonaventure, and then completely underground all the way to, I was at McGill, literally would just cross the street from the Scotiabank there. That was the only part I'd have to do outside.
Very, very cool. So congratulations, Michelle. All this to say, you correctly answered the underground city. There are no skyscrapers beneath ground, though. Somebody should warn the tourists of that. A few things that we learned this week. I learned a lot about different ways that you can help adult children purchase their properties. I had no idea what a collateral mortgage was. The risks associated with co-signing your adult children's mortgage. It sounds like the risks are less than I thought they were. I thought that would be a big ask if I had to ask my parents to co-sign a mortgage. It's still a big ask, of course, but not as big an ask as I thought it would be. And I also learned that remote work has completely changed the way that we are buying homes. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm on TikTok quite a bit. And I've been getting a lot of videos of properties in Texas. They're like new build homes that are like 20 minutes away from the Mexican border. And it's like 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, sprawling property, $285,000 US. And I'm like, looking at that, and I'm like, I could sell my house in Canada and buy that house and be mortgage free, even with the exchange rate. I mean, you have to live in Texas. You got like open carry laws down there and things like that. I don't know if I could get used to that, but
and it's very, very hot as well.
Very hot. Yeah, I don't like the heat. But is this something that, remote work is kind of giving people the opportunity to do? You could live anywhere in the world and work anywhere in the world now, conceivably.
My sister's company is, she works remotely. They're based out of London, technically. She's officially based out of Canada, but she has done months in Europe, months in the East Coast, months in the West Coast of Canada, down in the US, down in South America. She'll do a month at a time here and there, and she's had this wonderful flexibility to travel the world for the last 2 years and still be working throughout it, which has been really cool to see.
Yeah, even I work remotely for the most part. I come in studio with you guys every Sunday, and I look forward to it. But, my mom is about to move to Newfoundland, so I met her there last spring when she was house shopping to go looking with her. And I worked the whole week that I was there because as long as you have internet access, my grandma has Wi-Fi now. Once she found out that all of my grandkids work remotely, if I have Wi-Fi, my grandkids can come visit me more often because they can work from here. So I go see my grandma for a week at a time because I can still work from her house up in the Laurentians. And I would much rather spend my week by the lake than, in Chateauguay. No disrespect to Chateauguay, of course. What did you guys learn this week? Did I cover pretty much everything?
We spoke about property management as well.
Oh my goodness. How could I forget? It was a great segment. And again, let's give out that number one more time if people want to hire your company as a property management firm.
514-500-5222.
Amazing. And speaking of getting in touch with people, is that the same contact info if they want to work with you as a realtor? No, different number, right?
Separate company, separate. I keep the businesses completely separate.
That's smart. That's a smart way of doing things. Okay, so if you want to work with LJ as a realtor, you're thinking about selling your home, you're looking to buy a property, how do people get in touch with you?
So you can start with ljrealties.com. You can also find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and X. My handle is LJ Aguinaga. Or for more information on our listings and real estate team under the handle LJ Realties, feel free to call or text me at 514-500-4040, and we're looking for young, dynamic realtors to join our real estate team. I'm looking to add 7 to the team this year, so if you're thinking about it, have questions about real estate in general, feel free to reach out.
LJ's a great texter. He uses emojis very well. Those little, you like the comments, put little hearts on them. He's a great texter.
He's really good on TikTok as well.
Oh my goodness. TikTok, Instagram, the reels are lit.
Right.
Fred, how can people get in touch with you and Martin, who will be back next week, I believe?
Yeah, Martin is at the base camp of Mount Everest. He'll be back with us next week, hopefully.
No big deal. He's just at Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi is not the greatest, so he couldn't do the show remotely.
We need a kind of break, and it's good for him. He's sending us some amazing picture, by the way.
I don't know if that's how I would choose to spend my break, climbing one of the biggest mountains in the world, but okay.
Yeah, well, it's an achievement, I
Yeah,
guess.
exactly. How can people get in touch with you guys, Fred?
They could feel free to reach out to us if you have any mortgage need at fredandmartin.com. You could easily get your number there, fredandmartin.com.
That's the best place to go. And if you want to learn more about the show, underoneroofmtl.com is our website. And you can email us all of your mortgage and real estate questions, info@underoneroofmtl.com. I have my notifications turned on, so I find out as soon as an email comes in. And even then, sometimes LJ answers it before I can. So he's really, really quick. If you need any help producing a podcast, if you have an idea for social media, you're curious what influencer marketing is and think, hey, maybe I want an influencer being seen at my restaurant. Blake Lively was at Bernie Bing because she's in town, everything lit up for them on social media after she posted about it on Instagram. If you want that kind of traction for your business, go to my website, robinflynn.com. I can help you reach the people that you need to reach. If you missed anything, you can check out the show in its entirety on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. For LJ, Fred, and the mountain climbing Martin, I'm Robin. This has been Under One Roof MTL.